Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Policy and Public Initiatives Panel. My name's Chris Pearson. I'm Councillor for Bere Church, usually Deputy Chair of the panel, but will be sitting in as Chair this evening due to the unfortunate illness of the Chair. So just some housekeeping matters. There are no practice evacuations planned for this evening, so if the alarm does sound, please evacuate the town hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street, then to the car park behind the town hall in St Rumwold Street. The meeting is being audio recorded for live broadcast over the internet and on the council's website, and will also be available to listen to and watch afterwards. Please, would speakers use microphones at all times? Speak directly into the mic, as this activates the audio recording and is required for anyone who might be using the hearing loop system. Please speak from a position relatively close to the microphone. Members of the panel may use electronic devices to access their agenda and report, and may view and participate in social media. Visitors are also welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly. Please set them to silent, and please don't use any camera flash facility. If we do go on until 8 p.m. this evening, then we will have a brief break. I said if, Councillor Jowers. I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not we go on that one. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. And I'm just going to ask members to introduce themselves and then the officers. So I'll start on my right-hand side.
So I'm Councillor Jocelyn Law and I'm the Ward Councillor for Highwoods.
Councillor Phil Coleman, Marland Ward.
Councillor Sam McCarthy representing Shrub End Ward and substituting for Councillor Scott Patel.
Councillor John Giles, representing Mersey and Pifley Ward.
Councillor Jackie McLean, representing Mark Lair Ward, subbing for Kevin Bentley.
Councillor Reece Smithson, Tiptree Ward.
Councillor Cox.
I'm not a member of the panel. Councillor Pam Cox, Newtown Christchurch Ward and portfolio holder for Culture and Heritage.
Councillor David King, Mile End Ward and leader of the council.
Karen Turnbull, Economic Strategy Specialist in the Economic Development Team.
Nick Christo, Parks, Countryside and Greening Operations Manager.
Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Lucy Bredman. I'm Strategic Director at the City Council. I'm supporting the board tonight.
Thank you and welcome, everyone. So any declarations of interest any of the councillors have? No, I'm seeing shakings of head, so we'll move on to item 3. I think we've already dealt with substitutions. Councillor McLean for Councillor Bentley and Councillor McCarthy for Councillor Scott Patel. Urgent items, I'm not aware of any. No, and I'm being that's been confirmed to me that that's the case. Minutes of the previous meeting that were held on the 30th of November, first of all, and then we've also got the 11th of January before us this evening. Those who are in attendance on the 30th of November, is there anything in those minutes? We happy? Thank you. All in agreement? Right. Thank you. And the 11th of January? Agreed? Good. Okay, so that takes care of the minutes. Thank you. Have your say. I've had an indication of one member of the public wishing to have their say, and that's Mr. Kelly. I know you're familiar with the setup. I'll just remind you that you have a limit of 3 minutes and a bell will go at 2, which gives you a minute to wrap up, Mr. Kelly. And then you'll have, if you do wish, there'll be the opportunity to come back for a brief period. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, councillors and officers. Today, as you probably know, is St Andrew's Day. And there is a doctor, or in my view, Saint Andrew Wakefield, many years ago, actually questions the MMR, most of you may remember. And it wasn't just him, it was 12 other doctors, 12 other doctors. He got struck off, you probably know, he got extradited to, well, not officially, but he felt compelled to leave this country because they took his license away because he stood by his research. He's one of the best gastroenterologists in the country, if not the world. And now I'm very passionate. I remember my first campaigns back in late 70s, early 80s was apparently anti-apartheid. I'm not anti-apartheid. I'm pro-democracy. I'm pro-health. I'm pro-justice. I'm pro-sustainability. Now, this council is meant to be pro-sustainability. That's one of the latest issues. How is what we're doing with our health protocols at the moment sustainable? You know, you've all seen that the masks, you know, you've all seen, you know, scattering the streets of the city. I am absolutely certain that the basic protocols are damaging people because I listen to it on social media. I speak to people directly. They're vaccine injured and they're being ignored. You know, Maddie DeGarry in the United States, and there's Alex Mitchell in this country. There's many, many others, and they're being ignored. And I will go back to the vitamin D. Why aren't we being pro-immune system instead of giving it a walking stick like the vaccine? Why aren't we giving out vitamin D? Now, you know, I've spoken to councillors here, no names. He said he knew about vitamin D. He patently didn't. He didn't know about the father of vitamin D, Michael Horrick. The councillor to my right here seemed to be supporting me on the ivermectin. You know, please check out Dr. William Campbell's studies. We need to get on top of this because people are being damaged, and that means this council is being damaged economically, health-wise, etc. Our revenues are going down, and all this extra housing, I'm sorry, won't be needed in 10 years' time because of obvious consequences of how we're going about health. People are dying because of the ignorance of how we're going about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I don't need to remind anyone around the table that we are not a primary health care authority. I know you make these similar comments at a number of meetings. I'm sure we've all heard them. One or two of us might agree, one or two of us probably disagree with your viewpoint. Certainly when it comes to Dr. Wakefield, my eldest child was born just at the time that he was making some of his claims, and I did look very seriously into them and was somewhat concerned about MMR at that time. However, the subsequent research that I did of my own and discussion that I had with my GP led me to a very different conclusion to his. And I think that the overwhelming majority of the medical profession seemed to take that view that MMR was not what Dr. Wakefield suggested it was. You have a minute to respond.
Thank you, Leader. I respect other people's opinions. I listen to other people's opinions, and just because it's a minority doesn't mean to say it's wrong. Like I say, it's 12 other doctors that are supporting, stood by Andrew Wakefield's papers. On a personal level, if you don't mind, I remember speaking to you 40 years ago when you were canvassing at Parsons Heath, where I was living at the time. Perhaps not 40, 35. But as I said, the broad stroke of this is that we should be pro things. It's very easy to tell people or children not to do something. We should actually be saying what we should be doing, constructive. You know, why aren't we supporting people's immune systems? You know, this is what this is all about. There's a Malaysian study on vitamin D, as you probably know, that suggested sufficient vitamin D would prevent all hospitalizations. That was a study of 1,400 people. You know, I appreciate Councillor King's, sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And
Okay.
thank you for your contribution this evening. Right, I don't believe we have any more have your say speakers this evening, so we'll move on to item 7, which is City Status Centre update. And Lucy Bredman, I believe you're going to just introduce this item, and then we've probably got Councillor Cox and 1 or 2 others to flesh out, and then we'll open up to panel members. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you. So we've got a presentation for you this evening, or I've got a presentation. Simon, did you want to come and join us at the table? Simon Blaxall's here tonight, one of our important partners working with us on many of the things we'll talk about. Can you pull the presentation up? I'm not doing it, yeah. Are you going to pull the presentation up? Thank you. Okay. And we've got Matthew online, Matthew Brown, who can only be with us till past. So he's hopefully going to get a chance to just talk to a few slides in the presentation as well. So hopefully you've had a chance to read the report, and I'm really just going to highlight a few elements of it. I'll start with the first slide, if you can move on, which is our year of celebration. So there's kind of 2 halves to this. Year of celebration, what's it all about? It's about, you know, it is about celebrating what we have. It's about recognizing what a fabulous place Colchester is and the opportunities that we have here, and really celebrating those. And moving on to the next slide, there's a range of activities that are going on throughout the year. You'll be aware of a lot of them. Some of them have literally just popped up. The Royal Visit, really exciting. All looking forward to that. But actually around this is a year of events and activities that are taking place across the city. They're all being put on by the council. There are a few key ones that we are sponsoring. So the Siege event, Siege Spectacular. There's going to be an amazing exhibition of gladiators at the castle, the usual weekend celebrating our heritage in the autumn as well. So they're things we're directly sponsoring, but all the others are partners, and we're inviting them to join us in this year of celebration and helping promote their activities and events as well. And that's not just the city centre, that's across the whole of Colchester. And joining the party, I'm pleased to say we do have the opera at Laomani, and we do have the regatta at West Mersey, and we're constantly encouraging others to come and join in the celebration and use our marketing. So that's the year of celebration. As I've said, range of things happening there that you can see. You will have seen on the next slide as well, if you've seen the visitor guide. So if we move just onto the next slide, this is the centre of the visitor guide, again, just showcasing some of the events. This was November, so there weren't as many as there are now. To see an update on the events, they're all on the visitor website. But again, this starts to show you some of the lovely, colourful marketing and yeah, that's been pulled together. The backdrop that you saw on the first slide, that lovely skyscape, we've shared the toolkit with you, we've shared it with all our partners. The next slide shows the little stamps that partners can use. We can bespoke those stamps for specific events, and we've already been asked to do a few. The Institute are putting our vinyls up all over the Institute, that lovely skyscape. So again, starting to see not only the year of celebration and people getting on board, but actually some legacy as well, in that I think this lovely imagery is going to be around a lot longer than just a year. So then moving on, it's not just us. The bid, Simon's here, and the bid has really, in fact, jumped on this much quicker than we did with their town centre or city centre campaign that they started running in November. They're working with us, and again, I think with the bid, it absolutely bridges that year of celebration and a longer term vision, because this is all about more footfall in the town centre, business recovery, supporting businesses to recover. So here you'll see the city retail vision is absolutely part of this. We've also with the bid leading, our collaboration is a new marketing group, which is key, bringing lots of partners together to really think about how do we use all our individual marketing power that we have together collaboratively. And the city status has kind of given us that thing to kind of bind us all together to really help. And that's, it doesn't sound like a big thing. It sounds like something that might have been easy to do, but we've tried in the past and we just haven't pulled it off. But actually the bid is leading it now, and we really do have some ambitions to make a kind of joined up marketing approach that will make a difference for everyone. So there's also a range of videos that both, again, the bids take on their videos, hitting a different market to us, hitting a different demographic to ours. Our one very much, as you'd expect from the council, covering the whole of the urban and the rural area, showing off all our beautiful our places and spaces and buildings to go and visit. The bids really inviting people to come in and enjoy our nighttime economy and our retail offer. So there's something for everybody there. Really pleased as well to say that already we're seeing some momentum on things that are happening. I was pleased to see the other day from a Christmas perspective that Enlightenment's coming back. Was it Enlightenment? It was Enlightenment, wasn't it? Coming back to the Castle Park again and things like that. They need to build momentum. So first year they can often take a bit of time, and second year they might, you know, they might not happen because it didn't work. But actually, if you start to build that momentum, that's when you get the footfall, and that's when it starts to make a real difference. So I'll move on now to that again, that bridge between the legacy and the year of celebration. And this is where I'll bring Matthew in, because one of the things in the briefing that I had with the chair and Councillor Jowers was you'd like to see something tangible, especially in the legacy piece. So what the paper talks of is the legacy area, really focusing on things that we've just launched a new strategic plan. We have an economic strategy, which is literally hot off the press as well, which is based on a huge amount of engagement and research and consultation with our business communities who have told us what they need and what that strategy needs to be going forward. The same with our cultural strategy, which came out last year. Again, underpinning that is a huge amount of engagement and research with the sector, setting out a vision and a plan and some really tangible activities as well that need to happen. So with the legacy, there are absolutely some things, and Councillor King will focus on this in a moment, that we still need to think about. But there's an awful lot that we just need to build on, that we're doing at the moment, that are in our plans and in our strategies. And to give you something really tangible, we asked Matthew to come along to talk about two things. They are city centric and they're very linked to the heritage element, which I know councillors are often very passionate about. So Matthew, if I hand over to you, if you can talk about those two elements.
Thank you, Lucy. And just to introduce myself, I'm Matthew Brown, Economic Regeneration Manager at Colchester City Council. So, just to give an introduction, we've got two parallel funding programmes, Town Deal, Levelling Up Fund, which together total roughly £40 million of investment to Colchester in the short to medium term. Most of this is focused in the city centre, the exceptions being within Town Deal, we have £6 million for the Heart of Greenstead programme. Regeneration at Greenstead. We have a cycleway from the city centre to Greenstead, which is about £3 million. And there's some other small projects that happen outside of the city, but the majority of the investment is focused in the city centre. And with the Levelling Up Fund, it's entirely focused just in the southeast corner of the city centre. In terms of timescales, the Levelling Up Fund, it's kind of in mobilisation phase now. It goes into delivery as soon as we can go into delivery, and it needs to be delivered by March 2025. The Town Deal, most of the projects are actually now in delivery or the early stages of delivery, and they need to be complete by March 2026. So this is quite soon. You'll start to see things happen, if not already seeing them happen in the city centre. Could I have the next slide, please, Owen? Thank you. So the thing that's common to both the Levelling Up Fund and the Town Deal, there's a very heavy emphasis on heritage, historic buildings in the city centre in both programmes. So on this slide, I'm just going to cover briefly what's happening in Town Deal, centering on heritage. So Jumbo, the Jumbo Water Tower, it's actually subject to quite an extensive programme being led by North Essex Heritage Trust, which the council strongly supports, which is seeing roughly £1.5 million of town deal funding alongside a further £3 million of National Lottery Heritage Fund monies, which they've just going through the process. They've just submitted their round one bid. There's a little way to go to get the rest of the money in, but it's quite an ambitious scheme to refurbish and repurpose the tower. And it's going to be a really fantastic attraction and part of the local economy when that does come forward. Holy Trinity Church, we've secured the 517,000 of town deal, but I'm also going after £1.4 million of additional funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund to make repairs to the building, refurbish it and repurpose it to become a community hub. So again, that will also achieve is by having the building open regularly and accessible, it will also be able to showcase the heritage. Bearing in mind it's the oldest standing building in Colchester, it's also got the largest extant Anglo-Saxon tower anywhere in the east of England. So it's got a really strong story to tell, but it's just currently not accessible. And we hope to put that right through the town deal programme. Public realm, we've got a number of public squares. The one you've got on the screen is actually the Holy Trinity Square. So basically both sides of the church. The churchyard will become accessible, which is great for sort of having local people being able to use that space just for recreational use. You've got the strong Catholic culture in that part of the city centre who will benefit. So it's just nice to be able to bring that space to life and animate it just through creating some paths and walkways and just making it accessible during daylight hours. So then if I can just turn to the next slide, please. Thank you. Similarly, in the heritage, in the Levelling Up Fund, again, as with Town Deal, there's quite a heavy emphasis here on heritage, on historic buildings, and creating and improving access to heritage. So we had the announcement on the 19th of January that we've been awarded £19.66 million of money from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and we're now mobilising that scheme. So what you have on the screen, you've got a red line boundary which shows you the St Botolph's area of the city centre, St Botolph's roundabout, Vineyard Street, Britannia Way, and the area around that. In terms of the heritage of aspects of this, what we recognise is that when people first arrive in the city centre, let's say by train, for example, their first impressions are not great. The public realm is tired. It's dominated by a highway scheme from the 1960s. It's not attractive. It's got poor air quality. It suffers with high levels of crime. It's not a friendly place to be. So we're really focusing on making it attractive, accessible, which will help boost the economy, boost accessibility, and just make this a nice place to be, essentially. The Priory itself will benefit from better interpretation. And I think that's a theme across the Levelling Up Fund. We'll have the opportunity to improve signage, wayfinding, interpretation right across this zone, and even signal other things that are outside the zone which are not currently very well explained or hard to find if you're a visitor to the area. The Roman Circus is an example of that because it's a little way away from the core city centre, and it's actually, you've got the severance issues of Southway and St Botolph's roundabout. This scheme will help to overcome some of that because it will make it easy to access the south of Southway, essentially. Okay, and just actually another thing to mention finally on this slide, we've got the Roman Wall, which runs through Priory Street and also Vineyard Street. We'll be able to invest in that. We'll be able to invest in that asset and showcase it better and make it more accessible and incorporate it into public realm schemes. So we're actually really going to maximise the value of those heritage assets in the core city centre. And next slide, please, Aaron. Thank you. So my final slide, I just wanted to give a little bit more depth and context to one aspect of the Levelling Up Fund programme, which I've mentioned, which is basically a walking route from the town station, town railway station, to First Sight. And what you've got, if you look at this screen, sort of top left across and then middle across, you kind of have a linear route, and I'll just talk you through it a little bit. So top left, you can actually see the platform, Colchester Town Station. The intention is to actually build an additional steps and ramp, exit and entrance from the station, straight down into what is currently the Britannia Way car park, which will become a public realm. It won't be a car park, it will be a public realm site, which will showcase the Priory, and it will make the whole area really attractive. Then people will then walk through the Priory itself, which will be improved. So what we're going to do with Historic England, who are strongly in support of this scheme, is improve the walking routes through the Priory Gardens, but also improve the signage and interpretation. We'll have a lighting scheme so that it looks great at night. Although it's not accessible, you'll be able to see the Priory, it'll be lit up on the skyline. As people then leave the Priory Gardens, they cross Priory Street. There's an existing entrance there, but then they'll cross the road into what is currently the rear of the former Eastern National Bus Depot, part of which becomes the digital working hub, which is now going into construction. But part of that site enables us to build an attractive steps and ramp from Priory Street to the top of the wall, again showcasing the wall, protecting the wall, and then providing an onwards walking route up to First Sight. So it will kind of go in a straight line towards First Sight, where there'll be more wayfinding, more interpretation to help people get either to First Sight or to turn left towards the castle, the Natural History Museum, the east end of the High Street and Castle Park. So what that will do is, again, it's all about that experience, because at the moment, that part of the city centre, it's a regeneration zone, but there's some parts of it that haven't been developed for a number of years, if not decades. It's just about improving the look and feel, the coherence of the offer for visitors, safety, attractiveness. So we'll achieve all of that. There's also some other regeneration projects going on in that area, such as the digital working hub in Queen Street, which will again help boost that wider regeneration package that we get there. So just to say, this is where we've got to at the moment. We've just had the announcement in January. We're in mobilisation mode at the moment. So officers are very, very busy doing all kinds of things, setting up the programme to commission the work to then go into delivery of these projects as soon as we can. That was it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. So just moving on then to the final slide, and I'll hand over here to David, leader of the council, to just summarise. Thank you.
No, thanks so much, Lucy. Sorry. Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you very much, Matthew. I just wanted to address that concern that was expressed by the chair and members of the panel about the tangibles. And I hope this last piece has actually helped, because the truth of the matter is we're at a real turning point in terms of the look and the feel, especially for those coming fresh to the city. And many of us have changed our patterns, frankly, in terms of where we walk and cycle and go. And it's inside the next 3 years. Now, the huge challenge will be doing that well, doing that to the pace and the promise, and doing that with the least disruption. But those are problems that we welcome, because the advantages are going to be significant, as described. I love Matthew's description of that walkway. You know, wouldn't that be an extraordinary change? And there's something special for me too about what's happened, and Simon will talk to this, I'm sure, in his own terms, of the way that we are now working. So alongside those changes just described, the team Colchester way of working, and Councillor Bentley has been hugely helpful here, but we've matched and mirrored it, is to create a team that works across the local authorities with as seamlessly as possible, having some challenges with highways, I'll just mildly say, but we'll get there, and with our partners such as Simon, either in their leadership roles or in a collaboration way. It's a kind of Colchester spirit. If we could bottle it, and if we can continue, it's going to make a really significant difference, not just the pace, but the next steps, because alongside this huge degree of change and delivery for better, and widely supported because of that joint working, is going to be the next steps from master planning onwards, which will come up next. And so the way in which we do that work, the way in which we deliver change for better, make Southway, for example, something you could cross as opposed to run for your life. And elsewhere in the cities, the current core city centre, we call it that, to sort of develop a view of the city centre that matches change elsewhere. That spirit and the tangibles, I think, are significant. And I hope that there is some comfort. But there's also, I accept this, some ways in which that ways of working can make the pace and the promise more deliverable. So here's one example. So Jumbo, talked to by Matthew, what he didn't talk to, but it could make all the difference in terms of bidding for money for the Heritage Lottery Fund, is the way in which, with the help of others in the city centre, those who've been bravely seeking to deliver change for better in that structure and around that site, had help and advice from others, freely given. With the council, putting our answers forward to help supplement the team, to help them deliver when they come to that bidding process. We have to put ourselves the other side of that table when the bid comes through. What we will be able to offer, and we have to wait for the success or not, will be a proposition that has our financial capital support behind it, has the 1.5 million to which has been made reference, and also brings in the skills and expertise, heritage and otherwise, that the council can assemble. That's the kind of model where we're adding value. We're not going to lead it, not going to own it, not going to control it, but we're going to help shape it, and we're going to give it the best prospects of success. So there's a way of working here, which is also an intangible that's really meaningful, really tangible. The slide up here just talks really to the residual gap. So here we are with real tangibles. Here we are as a council, cross-party really, got a large degree of agreement around the economics, the facts and the issues for the city, a strategic plan and forward budget, all of which gives us some degree of surety. But we know we've got to do more. So, deliver, grow, widen and collaborate on my headings. We had the conversation this morning, isn't it? What else could we say that would be helpful? So there's a long list of deliverables, and some of those have been illustrated before. I think, and some of them haven't talked about, if you look at that, that gives us real substance. We don't need to do more than that in that sense. These are things coming through in the next 2 or 3 years. But what we've got to do is try to fill some of the intellectual space where the experiences of others can be drawn together and we can understand what else we might need to do. So we're now a member of the Key Cities Network. And that looks to me, I've been to several of their sessions, a really interesting set of networks. It includes university networks as well. Are we going to gain a great deal? We're going to have to give, and that's fine. But their experiences as cities and the advantages that cities have offered them, we're going to be dipping into that and working with them. So there's a research and a thinking piece. There's something about looking wider than the traditional city centre. And I know that there is, and it's been, I think, a real response to the fact that city status has caught imagination, that we're not going to have old fights about what is the city. That there is a recognition I see that we're this city centre in the narrow sense, the historical, cultural, and to a degree, absolutely retail centre. But we've got Stanway and Tollgate. We have the university, 15,000 students there, and those numbers will grow. We've got Norton Gateway for leisure. So our whole view of ourselves as a modern city is different to how it would have been 10 or 20 years ago. That new horizon and how we manage and develop those opportunities is both a physical, tangible piece, because things are happening now, and it's also an intellectual space in which we've got to grow relationships, and we made some real progress. And the last point is the obvious one, and I've touched on each of the moments through my 4 minutes or so, which is collaboration is absolutely critical. And the strength we're showing as a city is having a shared view of what we're going to do and then starting to share the leadership of it. And I look forward to see what Simon's got to do. So in the steps that just illustrated there, we see ourselves working with the county, the bid, with our ambassadors, and looking more widely than just city and urban, but looking urban and rural. We want that to be prominent in our thinking so that we don't do what we've perhaps done before, which is to neglect parts of the city in the widest sense of the term, and therefore lose the opportunities and the sense of community, collective community and pride in place. So there's examples there which I hope will give you some comfort, some real comfort that we've got an assurance about the way ahead, that we've got hard, positive, constructive tangibles. We've got an intellectual thinking space which we've mapped and we'll work through to the end of the year. And there are some of those intellectual pieces reflect themselves in ways of working, again, as I say, like marketing, which I know I tried several times, got nowhere, but this time we are. It can make a real difference because this is about reputation and it's about the way that we together make this happen. And that's the real tangible in the longer run. It's the ability to work in a way that's different from before. I'll stop there. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor King. I'm just going to bring Councillor Cox in then to sum up before I open up to members of the panel?
Sure. Thank you, Lucy, David, and indeed Matthew. I heard Matthew's presentation yesterday at a portfolio holder briefing, and I said, "Oh my God, it's the best thing I've heard all month." Died and gone to heaven, I think were my words. That because so many people have been wanting to see this happen for so long, and now these 2 pots of money are there. These plans have been there for a long time, and now they can be realised. I don't doubt there's going to be obstacles and problems along the way, but the vision is there to open up that side of town for that cultural access route, and I think I can feel it personally that City Stations is giving people the kind of the extra emphasis and oomph and confidence they need perhaps to do that, plus the money obviously comes in handy. So that I think was really exciting. I think David's absolutely right about a new way of working, the networks that are now opened up to us. That's legacy, you know, and the connections we make through that and the ambition we bring to that, that's legacy. I'm going to add another one, which is leverage. You know, there's £4.4 million being requested here now from the National Heritage Lottery Fund, which wouldn't have been made. And I think City Status will help us to achieve that. So leverage is key here. You're bringing outside resource in and external investment in. So at the more basic, I know I'm more focused on the year of celebration as well as the, you know, involved with the legacy piece, but year of celebration, I know there's ongoing let's say, you know, concern perhaps about, you know, is the Visit Colchester site, have they got enough events on there from outside the city centre? I would love to see that grow. So if you know of events going on in your own wards, please encourage people to download the toolkit and use the toolkit to brand events and to bring people out to your areas if that's what you'd like to do. There's every encouragement to do that. Free guided walks going to be offered to residents. Claire Taylor and team are working that up, including to Gosbecks to open that up. I was at the Jack Petchey Awards last night. One of the organisers of Jack Petchey hadn't really clocked about on City Status, and then thought, oh, that would be a really good thing for Jack Petchey to work with young people around that. So she's going to go away and think about how she might do. So it's organic, is what I'm saying. The more you talk about it and evangelise about it, the more people pick up events. The civic event, obviously, His Majesty is coming on the 7th. We've got the historic charters now digitised as a direct result of City Status. So the museums team went away. We've got the charters going back to, I don't know which monarch, but, you know, several hundred years of charters, which are now digitised and can be swiped through by the public on screen. So that's there you go. There's a tangible there, which wouldn't have happened. And in terms of city centre-based events, Ride London, as you know, is coming to Colchester. And that was announced today. So that is a national event coming through the town, which will bring a lot of people into town over in May. I can't remember which weekend it is, but I mean, so people are coming to us who perhaps wouldn't have come to us before. And I've got a real sense that things are absolutely tangible and are happening. So I hope that's reassurance for you. And if you have other ideas, obviously very happy to hear them too.
Thank you. Right. There's lots to be excited about there, I think, John. We didn't get any sense of that, did we, in our briefing on Monday? But I'm much more excited now.
I wanted to say anticipation.
I'm much more excited now, and spending much of my working life as I do around the St. Botolph's area, and often when I do manage to get 5 minutes to stretch my legs and get a bit of fresh air, I do often go through the Priory, and I think this really isn't a great place to spend my few minutes in the fresh air today. But I do walk that way, and I think, you know, it looks what is proposed is looking really good for the city centre. Right, Councillor Jowers, I saw you indicating initially.
I did, and I suspect that this is really a sort of a catch up and an interim view of where we're going and where we're hoping to go. Very broad brush in many ways. Incidentally, I remember walking down by St. Botolph's roundabout, which wasn't there at the time. There was something called the Empire Cinema, known as the Flea Pit, I believe it was. And you'd get 2,500 people rushing out of Britannia Works. And that, in a sense, is kind of part of the heritage we don't look at, which is this was a non-conformist blue-collar town, all right? I wouldn't say that it's a non-conformist blue-collar city, but the memory is there, as is shown in the voting to a degree politically. So I think there are one or two areas where we've been very lucky with Jumbo in particular, I think, because that has just festered on for decades. But there are other issues that we've got planning issues coming up with the cavalry barracks and the veterinary stables. These are something that shouldn't be lost because there's a big military interest in Colchester as well. There's a heritage there that we can't just take for granted. And it's all right doing that. It's a pretty good, it is very good, the circular walk in that area. I mean, Queen Street's always been a bit doggy, but having been to school in Priory Street, Chairman, so I'm all about that as a child. I was fascinated actually also by the issue of the regatta, because I think having been the commentator on that for 30 years, thank God no longer, I do hope Councillor King comes, because he will then be expected to walk the greasy pole, which, knowing him, he will do extremely successfully. But having said that, it's good that it's not just city centre, but we have to be a destination. And if I'm brutally honest, Colchester's looking a bit seedy. You know, I shouldn't say there are too many nail bars, hairdressers, whatever, but it needs a bit more of a boost somehow. And in a sense, it's a shame that the university is so far outside the urban area, because there's always been that kind of dichotomy between the two. And I think it's getting better. Mind you, if we put a ban on certain countries sending students, there won't be any students anyway. So we'll have to work out that. I'm also actually quite pleased that mention of Paxman's, which I keep coming back to, because, you know, Magdalen Mound, where the social housing is, the Hive, I suppose you all know where that is. What's it built on? It's the casting sand from Paxman's engines. And I often thought that Adrian Pritchard, when he left, he pinched all our Paxman's artifacts living in Stowmarket. He would do, wouldn't he? And there is a container load of them there. And I've said this before, but I'm getting my ear bent by the High Steward. Is he the High Steward? Uncle Bob?
You too.
Yeah, yeah. And and I think actually it's long overdue that we should look at not necessarily the archaic archaeology, but stuff that's actually still in people's memories and familial memories. That's important. It really is. And so I think on that basis, you know, yeah, it's a very good report. I didn't say that, did I, in the briefing? But I am now. And I also mentioned that, you know, it's slightly to the side of this, is that we're sitting in a building that actually was funded mostly by Jimmy Paxman. And the reason they put the statue of St. Helena on the tower was the only place they could put her that Jimmy Paxman couldn't get to. Seriously, that was there's a wonderful book. Andrew, what's his name, wrote a wonderful book about the history of Paxman's. But equally, I don't think we give enough credit to local businesses putting local money in. You know, we get this view that, oh, they're coming in, they're land grabbing, they're making fortunes, building tons and tons of little boxes. Is it a song it was? But actually they're reinvesting. So I like the idea of this, and I think that we need a quantum step up, because I've been going to Chelmsford for far more years than I would like to remember. That used to be considered below Colchester. But now it's immaculate and gleaming, booming, and we seem to be dipping the other way. But having said all that guff, I still think it's a good report. And, you know, I wouldn't say the road to hell is paved with good intentions at all. You have to have good intentions. What I'd like the next time round would be a prioritization, because this is a bit scattergun. And if we can get it so that we know what money is coming in, which we've had a pretty good idea, that, you know, there's 19.8 million and 1.9 million and whatever. Doesn't sound as though we're putting a lot in, but there we are. What we would prioritize and what timescales there would be on them, because I think if you try and do too many things at once, it doesn't work. So, you know, I'd like to see something really good, because I think about 20 odd years ago, yeah, what have I been here, 28 years, 20 odd years ago, we were going to renew the Hyde. We were going to put a lock, a fishtail weir in to retain water. And we did all the street furniture. And yet you still you go down there and it's a mud pit with Tesco shopping trolleys or whatever in it. We haven't done anything. And actually, that is one of our greatest assets, is the river. Because you might not see much of it at the Hyde, and what you see is pretty damned horrible. The moment you get beyond that, it's the best in southern England because it was commercial. So it hasn't been overwhelmed by plastic Tupperware dinghies and things. It's an amazing river. And what do we do about it? Go to Bristol and see what they can do. We did actually go to Bristol. Coast, we went as a delegation, coach load, to see how we could do it. But nothing ever happened. So what I don't want to see is for us to have wonderful intentions, but dilute it and do very little. So sorry, going on a bit, but in general, it's good. It's a step. It's a way step on our route to really defining what we want to do. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. As ever, I am engaged by your 20th century history of Colchester lessons. All right, Councillor Law.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you for the presentation. I think it's really brought the report to life. That was, thank you to everybody for that. And I found it really useful as well, the reassurance about the use of the toolkits in terms of taking events across the whole of the city to all the different areas, because I think that's something I feel conscious of, being an award that's a newer area. I want people want to feel connected, and so it's how we connect those people in from all the wards and make this a really inclusive year. Just something I'm conscious of as well, and this sort of touches maybe on sort of a legacy aspect, is in terms of how we might measure our aspirations at the moment for sort of pride in all the great projects that are going to be taking place, but how that translates into how our residents will be feeling and what the measurable impacts of, if they actually feel differently as a result over time. I was thinking of that because when I was looking at some of the aims of the year of celebration at the front of a report, and it was talking about things about feeling pride in the city. And I remember when we were looking, I think it was last November, on the panel at the results of the survey, and it talked about, one of the findings was where sometimes residents find it hard to feel pride in a place where they live, or that was lacking sometimes. So I guess I'm just interested in the sort of long-term kind of communication strategy and how we really reach out, to all residents on that. And then also, I was very interested in hearing about the work with the sort of the Key Cities network. I think that's really great, tapping into networks. And I saw a mention of the compassionate city status. And so I was interested in some more detail around that. Again, how we move forward into tangibles as a result, because it looks really great, the sort of aims of it. Obviously, it seems to be something you have to reapply for, I believe, after the 5 years. So it wants to show ongoing progress, but that looks really interesting because it's, again, something about how people feel and how they can contribute to society. And then lastly, I guess I was just interested in some more detail around the work with young people. And I saw there was detail in the report. I just think young people are really key as well. They're the future citizens of the city. And we talk in the report about wanting people to stay here. So yeah, just interested in the activities for those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. And I'm sure one or two people will make notes of the comments and questions that are raised as they go around, but I'm intending to allow the panel members to come in first. Councillor Coleman.
Many thanks, Chair. Following on from Councillor Jowers, collaboration and partnerships. We have a zoo, a university, castle, garrison, theatres, galleries, professional football club, a beach, sports facilities to die for. I'd like to see more sports tourism. We've got fantastic schools, a priory, concerts, plus the culture and heritage that's been gone through tonight. So when you're talking about collaboration and partnerships, not many cities have got all that. In fact, I'd say there isn't anybody that's got all that. You can have a beach in York. Well, I don't think there is one. So that's the partnerships. Please don't exclude. Let's include all and more that I've mentioned. But I have got one concern, and it's applicable to today, and this time that we're in. We've got a lot of funding, but the costs are going up. So that would be my question. What are we going to do with rising costs, materials, tarmac, wood, whatever is needed for all of these projects, rising costs, in just about everything we do today. But we've got the funding in, but yeah, it might be difficult as we go forward over the next couple of years with the costs. Thanks very much.
Good point, councillor Coleman. I'll leave that one dangling for somebody to respond to, but I'll bring councillor Smithson in next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was a great presentation. And as always, I'm going to be Eeyore for a little bit, and then I'll become Tigger again. I would just like to point out that today is in fact St David's Day, not St Andrew's Day. As a proud Welshman, I very nearly got very upset then. And I'm equally pleased to see that the team have managed to find something for Darius to do during this year of celebration with the Centurion event. You try and stop him from attending. So a couple of things. I was curious why the zoo wasn't mentioned during the presentation, or I missed it, but it didn't strike me that the zoo was engaged at the moment. Like Councillor Coleman, I share concerns about costs. I also share concerns about the loss of parking revenue from Britannia Street being removed or changed. We are struggling financially. How is that going to be replaced? I don't think it will be replaced immediately through the tourism that comes to the city, not in the way that the parking revenue comes straight to the council. I sound like a broken record when I talk about the involvement of events outside the city and the rural wards and the like. So I had some ideas. Councillor Cox will no doubt start scribbling furiously now. The fringe.
Hold you to it as well.
Sorry?
I'll hold you to it.
By all means. The fringe. Could we put on some of the fringe events in some of the larger town halls, parish halls, Tiptree, Mersey, Stanway? They've all got big halls. It builds a sense of involvement and community. We don't seem to have tied in the civic events into the year of celebration. So we've got the opening of the oyster fishery. We've got the mayor making ceremony next year. There are things that happen regardless, and they involve this wonderful space we're all sitting in. Let's open up this space and use this space as well. Colchester in Bloom. It's such a simple thing to do. It's borough citywide. It covers everything, and it's so easy to bring people together with that. Bringing together the various Christmas fairs that will be happening regardless. Tiptree's got a pretty good one now. It's like 3,000 people attended last year. Let's find a way to tie these in somehow. Blue plaques and notable heritage around the borough. There are a number of blue plaques and notable historic things outside of CO1, CO2. We should perhaps find a way to include those in some of the things that we're doing. I think, you know, if you start looking for notable people of Colchester in its widest sense, there will be quite a lot. And I think a lot of schools could be engaged to get involved in that way. And then lastly, and I can't resist having a little plug for Tiptree. Has anyone spoken to Peter Wilkin about doing some sort of city jam? I cannot believe Peter wouldn't be up for it. You know, he's done a coronation jam already. He will have done, you name it, it will be there. Oyster fish jam. Yeah, oyster fish, champagne bottles. Let's get Wilkins involved. You know, if you want to grow a message, they export to over 100 countries. So that's me done.
Thank you, councillor Smithson. And every time I fly on BA to visit my mother, I get jam from Tiptree.
I have
Good
had
point.
jam delivered to my table in 7 different cities in China, all from Tiptree. It is. It makes me feel like I'm at home every single time I travel.
Right. I haven't seen any other indications, so I'm going to move back to councillor Cox and councillor King
Okay.
initially, just to
Yeah.
see if you want to pick up on any of the
Yeah.
comments. And I think, councillor McLean.
I noticed Leomani is mentioned in the report. If we could spell the name right, it would be really good. Marnie, I don't think they'd be very disappointed with such a heritage site. And, you know, obviously, I think they would get very much involved and behind this because of all the history, Henry VIII and all the rest of it. So it would be really good to get them on board. So, yeah, fabulous venue. So.
Great. Thank you, councillor McLean. And I think, you know, some really wonderful suggestions for inclusion, as David was suggesting earlier on. So I'm going to come to you first, councillor Cox, and then councillor King.
Sure, and on that exact point about Leomani, they're wrapped into it, and the anniversaries are wrapped in, and that would have happened last year. So they're now using the branding and so on. So that's and the summer operas are going on there. So and the same with the zoo. I think discussions are taking place, slightly delicate for various reasons, but they've got a big anniversary coming up. But they're an obvious partner, as are Wilkins. So yes, absolutely take that on board. Just some other specifics. They're always happy to celebrate industrial history, John, and blue collar history, and I think, you know, street sculpture trails, potential, you know, possibilities around those kinds of things, and these are just ideas. So, but you can see how they may come into fruition. Jocelyn, I think the data question and the youth work question, we do need benchmark data, and we have a new project officer who's been hired, I think, as a result of this city status funding, who will help us with that element of it. The youth work, I think, is similarly, where conversations are happening between partners, but someone needs to then follow up and say what's happening with that. And we need capacity to do that. And with that person in post, we will have that capacity to do that follow-up work. They would be probably the things I would pick up on. But lots of really positive ideas. So thank you. And I'm glad, I hope you're reassured, and keep on with the ideas. I think, yeah, it's a great answer.
Thank you, councillor Cox. Councillor King.
Oh, thanks so much. And look, is it, you know, every time we had these conversations, I remind myself, we said between us, really, let's make this a place where we have a free flow conversation where we feel we make a contribution rather than here it is, it's just sign it off. So in this spirit is how we need to continue. So thank you, all of you, for comment and contribution. That's really helpful. Trust us, we go away with the long list and see what we can build into the programme lies ahead. And I'd ask you to talk to your colleagues. And when you go back and have a second or third thought, you know, put it into Lucy at the very least, or come to Pam or I. We, you know, we want to be, we're very easily persuaded. Things we can do, we're going to do them because this is all about us and the city, and it's about our residents, isn't it, in the wider sense. I'm glad we're now getting comfortable about talking about the wider sense of the city, not the narrow sense. John, can I go to your point about priorities? So here's the rub, which is resources curiously aren't enough to do everything at once. So completely, we understand this, do we not? So the things that we're silent about, I remember this is in my short career here, I think probably 3 years ago, had a really good presentation about possibilities for the river. We've never been back to it. And I suspect on the last administration, all this is just because now you have to sort of deal with what you have to deal with that's most pressing, and probably in a sense, even though it's difficult and takes several years, and fantastic though it will be, the changes you can make, you know, the tangible changes you can make in the near term. So I'll take that prompt and we'll go back and have a look at that. But I think it will require maturity of us all in this place and elsewhere to sort of say, okay, we can do some work, but it will be probably next year. It's probably going to be a 5-year look. You know, it's that kind of big picture sense where we have to be grown up enough to say all of it matters, but it can't all be done at once. So do we have a sense of a broad understanding about sequence? But in that spirit, absolutely up for doing that. Paxton, we talked about. The pride of place, thank you for those points and that sense of measure. You touched on that, haven't you? One of the things I think is going to be really critical, because for me, all of this is for what purpose question, is actually the quality of life is such that whatever it is, the culture sense of happiness, there's a conversation, you know, bobs up a bit. And that when people come and move here, and people are all the time, and actually on balance, it's a great thing, they're coming positively, but that, you know, the sum of the population feels better about life here. You know, the things that we can influence. So yes, I want us to do that. We'll go back to the survey, in my view. There is an interesting bit of research in my head anyway, which goes, how is Colchester seen, not just internally, but beyond this place? And I think we should be thinking about that as well. If we're going to be aspirational as a city of the future, not just in the past, then we have to have a sense of where are we, how are we seen? Because some of this is frankly perception, some of it is a fact and a set of facts, realities viewed differently. So I want us to go back and have a look at that. So it's a really good point. We need to feel locally, sense of place, collectively a sense of place, but how we've seen, how's that felt is actually part of the way ahead, I think. You know, it's one of those truisms for me at least, where feeling is as important as what we call a fact. You know, how we wake up in the morning, is that not a fact? How that colours everything else that follows. So there is something in there about us having a measure, going back to it and seeing what progress we've made. I think it's probably, if we're setting the points, are really great that are constitute possibilities to add to this. We'll look at it. The historical centre, John, you touched on that and you've had a response. I think that's probably it. There's one last point I suppose I would make, which is it's plain that if you can smell the paint as you come up the stairs, the reason for that, not just that we might have had a visit to this place, it was just that a number of us have recognised that we're struggling to maintain the condition of this building and others. Now, this is, frankly, eventually gets fatal, and it's all because of the circumstances. It's not political to say this. Is the reality of less funding available for the local authorities has meant we've had to sort of really make some difficult choices. We're going to turn that on its head for a period. We recognise we've got a backlog into it's not, in my view, scoped completely, but we know that we've got some significant maintenance and refurbishment issues. The lift is just one small illustration of that. So we're going to be addressing those. And so in the forward plan, we are putting aside funding to sort of look at condition, respond to it. So the whole of our asset management is part of the way ahead. This will take several years, in my view, to work through. But I'm hopeful that we'll smell more paint, we'll use this building better. It is well used actually, but there are spaces we all know out of sight. Many of you may not have seen it, some of you will, that we should be making a renewed attempt to turn in condition and then turn in use. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I think the reference to this panel, I've been on it for 2 years, and what impresses me is how constructive, occasionally challenging, but usually very positive members from all sides of the chamber are when we come to this panel in terms of making our voices known and making our suggestions that I think are mostly heard and listened to and acted upon. Councillor McLean, you indicated, so I'm just going to bring you in and then I'm going to ask Lucy Bradman just to wrap up anything that might have been missed for us.
Yeah, just one quick word would be to maybe, as we are such, we have so many parish councils around the area, which are wholly important as well, with with working along with us, that we ought to tap into them and make them all inclusive, because they all have many sites out there of interest. And there are quite a few, even in my ward, about 5. So,
yeah, thank you very much for that reminder, Jackie. I think Phil, you wanted one more?
Yeah, very quickly. Obviously, we put our residents first, but it's interesting. Hotels want to establish themselves here. There's 2 more that I'm aware of, plus one being built at the moment. So why are hotel chains wanting to locate here and increase their beds? Is that not an indicator as well?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think your point, Councillor McLean, about ensuring that whatever we do around celebrating city status needs to percolate throughout the whole of the city is a point that Councillor Law was making earlier as well, and that I've made previously. We need to ensure that whilst there's a recognition that the focus is on the city centre, because that's where most people will gravitate to, it's absolutely critical and essential that everyone in the city feels as though they're included and involved in our celebrations. Over to you.
So just a couple of things, just to add to the questions you asked, just building on that point first, the parish and town councils, I chair a parish clerks forum, and we meet every quarter, and they've had the city status update. They've been engaged along the way. They get updates about the plans. One of the things that I we pulled out in the report is the fact that that is one of the gaps for me that we do need to do a bit of work on. How do we engage in a different way with our rural communities? We've talked about it tonight, and certainly, if we do hold some summits going forward, then absolutely one of those could be with our parish and town councils, thinking about how we build on that. But we've already got some platforms in place that we're using. Young people, a really, really important point. We talked about the heritage element of Towns Fund and Loughton today, but actually there's a big element of Towns Fund that's about young people. So townhouse refurbishment out at Stanway, at Highwoods. There's also some programs specifically around engaging with young people on a cultural platform as well, and the Institute's very engaged, as well as Sixth Form College and the university. So I think we've got networks in place. It's just the next step is, absolutely to do more engagement and bring them in. But again, we're on the right track. The Zoo and Trip Tree Jam, they're both engaged in the marketing group. We hope they're invited. We're going to get them there by hook or by crook, because they are really, really key partners. You stole a jam idea from me. I'm sure that was, but we're absolutely on that. We want that lovely skyline on their jam, and a year of celebration jam. If we can get there, we will. And the costs, I think, really good, important point about the costs that you bring up. So I'm leading a capital review at the moment of our capital financing, and absolutely there's an awful lot of work going on mitigating costs. That's part and parcel of what programme managers are asked to do all the time with capital programme. One thing that I will say that's really useful is Luff. We bid for that last year and hugely escalated the prices. So I think Matthew would tell us he's really comfortable with the Luff costs, because he put 25% on everything, and that was, so we're really comfortable that actually we've got the funding we need in there. That was the good thing about how late that programme was. Towns Fund, we're constantly re-looking at those budgets as well and making sure we mitigate any, but it's a really important point. That was it.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I've come on a bike with no speech prepared, but I just thought it's really worth saying how brilliantly the officers of the council have done to get this money. And for me, it's about having a vision and a strategy. The funds are giving us the opportunity to do something now, and that's what's really important. And just Lucy mentioned a minute ago about the marketing. I mean, if you go on a website at the moment and say what's happening in Colchester, you'll get the Colchester Castle or something similar. So on the marketing, it is about linking it all together. So if you dial up and say I want to go to a jazz concert or whatever, there is an awful lot going on in Colchester that even people who've lived here for a whole life don't know what's going on. So that just as an example. The other thing is obviously the council's under serious pressure for funds. So the only way we're going to get more money in, and you made a reference to the hotel, is actually getting private businesses involved. And if you talk to lots of the successful businesses around Colchester at the moment, they don't really know what's going on either. And an initiative that Adrian Pritchard got going and Pamela's continued as an ambassador. So we've got to really make sure that we've got a mission for the ambassadors. The marketing is one, but another is actually if a business comes to town, what do we give them? What do you as a council give them? What do businesses give them? So we're looking to develop that. And then if it's a certain style of business, we've probably got 3 businesses in town that are doing that really well. So link them up. So that's an opportunity. And even just, I'll stop on this one. The last point was young people. There was an ambassadors meeting. Actually, it wasn't. It was a bid meeting. We got some businesses in just to, again, give us their ideas. And actually, they're struggling to recruit. And we've got 2 top grammar schools. We've got a fantastic institute, Sixth Form. We've got the Works University. So just off the back of that, nothing happened yet. We just said, well, why don't we have our own employment fair? Because the solicitors, Burkitt Long and others are doing it themselves. Well, get everybody in a room. So anyway, early days, but I'm just saying it's these initiatives and actually communicating with people around Colchester, trying to keep it simple in the short term, because there are so many things we could do, We just got to keep it simple. Stop there.
Thank you. Right, just because we're having such a fruitful interaction this evening, I'm going to allow councillor Smithson one last bite of the cherry before we move on to the next item.
Thank you, Chair. Lucy should stop mentioning things and then I'll stop having ideas. Actually, I thought as we've got the leader, deputy leader and most of the relevant people here, we should really consider rural engagement for one of the council champions. We should have a rural engagement strategy and link it all together. I think it ties nicely with the next agenda item as well.
Thank you. That goes back to our last meeting agenda, doesn't it? Yeah. Right. Thanks very much. Okay. I'm going to wrap us up then for item 7 and move us on to item 8. Thank you very much, Councillor Cox, for your involvement this evening. Councillor King, are you staying for the rest of the meeting, or
I couldn't, how could I want to go?
Right.
Yes, you're all looking at me across the toe going, oh, leave.
Thank you. All right, we'll move swiftly on to item 8, and this is the grounds maintenance transition, and it's more of an update because we asked when it was first brought to us last year that we have an annual update on where we're at. And Nick Christo, you're going to just introduce this item for us, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, grounds maintenance certainly doesn't get the hype that the previous agenda item has had, but let's raise the bar now. Let's raise it even further. As the Chair said, this is just an update report, really, following the panel's decision last year to extend the current contractor arrangement for a further 3 years to help us prepare a bit more for the transition to an in-house model. So although it's still in the early phases, there's been some really good positive steps that have taken place in the last year. Focusing on the approach of greening and parks maintenance in general, from increasing our rewilding areas to the cessation of the use of glyphosate. We've also had a reorganisation of the team. We have really clear aims, and it's given us 4 key focus areas to help us in the transition and to effectively be prepared. Within that, there's grounds maintenance operations. So that's the operational management of some key sites and assets such as Castle Park, our allotments and beach huts. We've got our projects and strategies. So we've got a number of projects within the team. I think we had 38 live ones a couple of months ago. And that is delivering section 106 improvements. We've got new play areas going in at Highwoods Country Park, at Gavin Way, and also the one at Buffett Way. We've got management plans for our countryside sites and nature reserves. So we've got the updating of those. And we've also created a new role of maintenance technician, and that has enabled us to undertake general repairs on our sites, removing the need to rely on third-party contractors. And that will enable us as a team to be able to respond and repair to issues in our sites a lot more quicker and in a lot more cheaper way. We've got an area around people to ensure, to lead, to nurture and enable our communities to enjoy our environment. And that's just to ensure that we're engaging our communities and our people on basis. So that's really building on our volunteer programme at Highwoods Country Park primarily, welcoming schools and events on our sites, and our place to manage, maintain and keep safe our environment. We've created our in-house trees team, and that helps again remove the reliance of external contractors, but it gives us a lot more resilience. It gives us that proactive approach that is something that we would look to continue and to carry out when we bring the service in-house and we have our operational team directly managed, that we're able to respond. Just to wrap up, we have continual ongoing discussions with our grounds maintenance contractors, so to ensure that they are still delivering the contract, because that's really important for us. You know, whilst we're working for a transition, we don't want that to drop off. So we're really engaging them, and they are helping us. Our ethos, our aim is not to necessarily bring it in for like, but actually to bring it in with what's necessary. You know, the pandemic really brought parks and green to the fore. People really realised how important the green spaces were to them, how much it mattered to them. but also the management of green spaces has significantly changed. No longer are we cutting every blade of grass to an inch of his life. You know, we are rewilding, we are allowing nature and habitats to thrive in our spaces. And we're just trying to bring our residents and our visitors along on that journey by us making these subtle changes. I'm not going to mention our Woodland Fires Diversity projects, our fantastic project that we're doing, but all of these are steps that we're taking, that we have been undertaken, and we will continue to undertake until we're in a position to bring in the army of operatives that can help us manage our spaces in the future.
Thank you very much. And I wasn't intending to belittle this item at all, because the open spaces and the green spaces across the city are equally important and essential to the well-being of the residents of Colchester. As you quite rightly point out as well, we're no longer just looking at manicured spaces, but at wilding and looking at how we can make most use of the green spaces from top to bottom of the city, east, west, north and south. I've seen a few hands up. I wasn't quite sure whose hand went up first, so I'm just going to go down the table because that's the way I've seen them. So Councillor Law.
No, thanks very much for that report, and I found that very helpful as well to have an update, not having been on the policy panel or council at the time, you know, when those decisions were originally made. And really completely agree about the importance of green spaces and environment to our well-being. Together with Councillor Coleman, we're both on Myland Community Council, and you probably remember as well, Councillor Coleman, we undertook some research work and did a survey of residents, and actually environment and the green spaces was found to be like central to people's well-being. So yes, that's great to hear that approach. I just got some questions really around some of the details. I was interested to read about the sort of reorganisation of roles and how mention of how that's enabling people to have more of an operational buy-in themselves. I think that's great when people feel that they've got more engagement, and they and I was interested as well to find out more about, you know, a new maintenance technician role. And there was some mention about sort of cost savings as well from that role being introduced. So I'd be interested to know more about that. Also, I was very interested in the whole emphasis on people and drawing people into spaces, a mention of, you know, the park ranges and people engaging with volunteers and the public. And I wondered how much linkage there's been with things like green prescribing. You know, obviously that's very important work linked with like the Health Alliance and the ICB voluntary sector. So interested to hear about that. And also I was wondering if you could say a bit more. There was mention about sort of the tree team and sort of a possible sort of commercial offer. Again, if there's any more details around that. But no, thanks. That was a really helpful update. And thanks also for your time around my inquiries to you as well about sort of play parks. Again, borne out by the fact I think it's so important for our young people to get them used to being in the outdoors, you know, early on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. I'm not going to bring you into answer after each one, Nick. So if you could just note down, please, and I'll bring you in after 2 or 3. I've got Councillor McCarthy next.
Thanks, Chair. Nick, I've just got the one question, so don't worry. I love grounds maintenance. This is exciting for me. Not quite as exciting as the previous item, admittedly, but it's there. So when I briefly chaired this panel a couple of years ago when we first discussed this. So I'm really pleased to be here tonight. I was going to mention about the contract we have in place at the moment, but it sounds like they're still delivering. One of the things when we were discussing this at first was the kind of the disconnect between councillors being able to report something, finding out when something was done, hearing back, and then being able to feed that back to residents, because things just happen and you have to kind of chase it up. Responder. Nick, I don't know if you can help with this, but I was of the understanding that eventually councillors would have access, we'd be able to see when things were going on and make requests. I just think that would be such a boon to have. Are we any further on that?
Thank you. Given that there were a few questions from Councillor Law and Councillor McCarthy there, perhaps it makes it easier if you could just answer those, Nick, at this stage.
Absolutely. I'll start with Councillor McCarthy's first. Yes, Responder. It's now called Task Smart. So yes, it has launched. It's launched more on the street care side of things, and the tree element of Responder has launched for the greening team, and we're imminently going to launch the general inquiries, and that's a really good two-way process. It's meant that we've really streamlined the way things are reporting. So when people are reporting it through a responder, it automatically goes to the operatives on the ground. They're able to deal with it. It doesn't need to get filtered by 3 other members of staff. They're on the site, they're able to provide feedback. And once they provide feedback on their phone or tablet, the response goes automatically back to the inquiry and or the counsellor, and depending on what route that's been given in. So that's a really streamlined way to do that. It's worked well in street care and safety, and we're waiting for the full package to come across to us. Okay. Councillor Law, yeah, it's got a few of those points there. People engagement, yeah, we're really keen on that, and we're really keen to, as I said, build up our volunteer programme there. Although we've got the team at Highwoods Country Park, we're not going to stop there. We want to be able to outreach to the wider city there. You've mentioned green prescribing, absolutely. One of our new posts that we had is a health and education ranger that is working very much with the communities team, putting in some match funding, some bid funding there, working with Community 360, building on the existing good work that happens out there in the communities. But ultimately the role there will enable people to access our green space for health and wellbeing benefits to help with that. And we've recognised that physical activity, having a daily walk, accessing these spaces is something that we all take for granted. But if we can provide that to residents that may find that difficult, then that's fantastic. And that's something that's a really big agenda for us. And as I said, we're working with the community teams to make sure we've got a very joined up approach on that. Maintenance technician, yeah, I've advocated this when I came to the authority. I'm used to having that sort of role of control within the teams. It just enables us to deal with things really effectively. Yes, there will be a significant cost saving there, because at the moment, anything that goes on, if our play park inspector cannot fix it and it's pulling him from inspecting play parks, then we go to an external contractor. External contractors charge day rates, you know, and it's just how it is. We will still need to use contractors on some of the larger scale stuff, but the hope and the model, the tested model, is that by us having an employed member of staff, we'll be able to prioritise the quick wins ourselves. We'll be able to prioritise what needs to be done within our sites and just get on with it as part of the day job, rather than create additional workflow demand there. And lastly, the trees team, yeah, fantastic. Specifically mentioned the commercial offer. That is something that we're exploring, and that's something that we'll be doing for the next financial year. We've got a very modest income target to achieve with that, but for us, it's being able to provide a service twofold. First of all, to be able to deal with our own tree stock in a really effective way. You know, we've had a tree inspector in post for the last 18 months, and we've really moved over from a reactive to a proactive tree service, where we do inspect all of our trees, not everything annually, but every 3 years. The high priority trees get inspected annually. So the work that is now generated from that, we're able to deliver that. The priority one works, we're able to deal with those on site within our own teams, rather than go to tree contractors there. And the second strand is being able to help our residents when they call up the council, where the answer before was, no, it's not on council owned land, you need to go to somewhere else. The emphasis now is, well, can we help? And that's the bit that we need to try out next year. It's the can we help? And if we can help, that's us providing a service, a chargeable service, without compromising our core accountabilities, i.e. our statutory responsibilities that we have on our own trees. So that's in its early phases, and I'm pretty confident that we can give that a good go. And if we can grow the team, fantastic.
Thank you, Nick. I've got Councillor Jowers and Councillor Coleman, and I've just seen Councillor Smithson indicate. Councillor McLean. All right. I'm going to move on to Councillor Jowers, please.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And first of all, I'd say that I think that in view of the contract they got, ID Verde have done well, but it was a commercial contract. And that, to a degree, is a bit of an issue, because at my advanced age and senility, I can remember when everything was in-house. And we had our own nursery behind the castle. And I'm assuming we've still got Spring Lane, which is very useful to have, actually. And we had poplar nurseries maintaining some incredible flower displays in the high street. In fact, I go back so far as I remember when a horse carted the water bowser down every morning and watered. And it was stunning because we haven't got any trees other than the sprig next to the portaloo, have we? And of course, that comes under something else that I've gone on about. If Frinton can plant trees all down their esplanade, why can we not do something with the high street? Because in a sense, we've been talking all evening about the concept of Colchester. And actually every other city I go to has got vegetation, it's got plants. When I used to have to go to China every year for the county council when they could afford it, we had an office there. You notice in most of their streets, they have 3 rows of trees either side. Anti-pollution. It's cool, it takes carbon monoxide out of the air and whatever. So in a sense, this is a progress, again, it's a progress report. And I think it's a good one. And I think we need to start looking, we've got 3.5 years to go before this changes. I mean, the decision has been made. So effectively what we're looking at is what we're going to concentrate on, how we can fund it, where the pinch points are. Have we got rid of Jarman Road? Has it all been built on? Because that used to be a depot as well. I'm just going back to thinking about where, because you're not going to be able to use Shrub End. That's going to be developed as a major waste recycling centre by the county, I suspect. Something else I regret, and you remember this, Chris, was that we used to have local service agreements. And if we're talking about devolution, in its broadest sense, if we go down to a kind of metropolitan Essex or whatever it's going to be, there is an opportunity for us to bid for going back to local service agreements. I thought they worked really, really well, actually, apart from when we had rows with Councillor Bass, God bless him. And I think that, again, I'd absolutely agree, it's a very good report, but then we've got other issues coming up, but it's likely the Middlewick's going to go at some stage for a certain degree of housing. I'm not going to comment pro or con, it's just the likelihood is there, it's been passed. We're also likely to get a damn great chunk of green space, which is going to put quite a lot of pressure on. And equally, it's something that we need to look at is to, when you've got that starting from day one, what do you do with it? How do you do it? I think that's actually could be a really interesting project because it's the gateways in, isn't it? You don't really see Highwoods when you come into town. I in the dim and distant past, went up in a helicopter with, what's Adriana? Andrea, yeah. Actually, she wouldn't get in the helicopter, she's too scared. And it's amazing to see how green Colchester is. I was also involved in buying the swamp, which was the piece of land at Coombank roundabout through to Spring Lane. I remember when it was put up for sale, it said so many acres and someone painted of swamp underneath it. But actually, it's massively beneficial to us. And I think sometimes we talk ourselves down. We are green. It's an incredibly green city. Keeps thinking of borough, but nothing in the centre. Go to Chelmsford, you do. Every street you go along, you know as well, Councillor King. It's green, there's flowers. It's absolutely amazing. And that is part of the attraction. I go to Bury St Edmunds lot shopping in Sudbury because they've got something that we haven't. They're actually, quite apart from the intrinsic values of it and the architectural values, they're actually beautiful. So in a sense, I think that by going over to this contract, there is an opportunity for us to stamp our individuality and our sense of cultural style on it. So it's just a hope that as we move forward into the future, and of course, we're also going to have to start looking at it. It's going to be either hydrogen or electric vehicles. You're going to have to have maintenance issues with that. Big issue is where do you put them? Where's the depot going to be? I think actually it's a really good scheme. I'm very pleased with it. I'm pleased the decision was taken that we would bring it back in-house, because how somewhere looks is a reflection of how we think and how we operate as a political entity. And you're absolutely right about this being it's basically a non-political panel, effectively. I mean, now and again, we have a little burst of acrimony, as we would, wouldn't we? But other than that, it opens up lots of opportunities for us. So I'm very pleased, and it's a good report. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jowers. I've got Councillor Coleman next, then Councillor Smithson, then Councillor McLean, and we'll wrap up and allow Nick to respond. Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Nick. I'll spend most of my time working life on pitches. So this is a vital subject for me, particularly after the last 3 years as well, when the vast majority of the population probably realised that they needed parks and open spaces. I actually chaired the first ever meeting of this grounds maintenance contract. I think Sam took it on. We initially looked at the two leaders for it was reducing costs and giving you the flexibility in-house to cover what was needed at that time rather than Ivy Verdi doing it. Is that still the focus? It sounds if you're down that road of reducing costs and being more flexible, are those two still the key primary focus or focuses? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Yeah. I'd like to start by saying thank you. I thought this report was really good, laid out really well, nice and clear, easy to understand. So thank you for that. That's really helpful. I have two questions. You talked about the role of the maintenance technician. Have we or will we be developing an apprenticeship route into that role? I think it's important that we train and bring people through ourselves. And then the second thing is, obviously we're talking about reducing cost, but actually part of that is working smarter. So where we have small issues that could be done locally by, say, a parish council, are we utilising their maintenance teams to do some of those small things, save someone having to come out from a depot here, pay the parish council to do it, and it gets done quickly and people see visible action quite quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smithson. I mean, just a reminder that it's not in-house at the moment, and it's going to be a year or two or three before it actually is. But yeah, I think you're making some valid points there, and I'm sure Nick will pick them up. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Just from an observation point of view, where Spring Lane is, they're talking of taking that all back in-house and rewilding, I think, aren't they? At the moment, it's being farmed, it's being kept for you, and it's being, has a rent coming in. So that's obviously that's money which could be used elsewhere. That's a huge space to try and keep for all the public to walk over and to police it as well. Because last year there was a fire set alight down there and there was vandalism, and there's always vandalism on the buildings. So I think you need to be smarter and to engage with some of the people that work the land to actually help you with this, because it's a huge chunk of an area to keep an eye on, and it's walked over every day massively to the connections to all over the place. So I think you don't want to lose an income in my book, which could brings in quite a sum that could be used to actually keep these areas, and you can rely on the farmer to actually keep it for you as well. While it's growing something, it's all been kept, cleared away for for a few months, and you have to just walk over and do what you like. So it's I think we need to be smarter as well with what you're doing. No, I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying you could earn out of it better.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. So one or two suggestions for going forward, but also I think there were one or two queries and questions as well, Nick. So I'll leave you just to pick those up, please.
Yes, thank you. Totally agree with the comments that have been made. I think some very valid comments there. We do absolutely engage with the people that manage the site, or do that there. That's a ethos that we've done through that stewardship agreements or farm tenancy businesses agreements. It fits in with the councillors said around reducing costs, working smarter. I think being flexible, absolutely with that there. And I think we have to realise that whilst we're in a commercial contract, we are quite fixed. Having it in-house gives us that opportunity and that ability to manage the lands in a different way where it is most appropriately to be managed. And that's a model that we would look to. If we are taking on a whole variety of new green spaces, then we need to be able to have the resource to manage it going forward there. And we need to be smart as to where that resource goes and in what capacity that we're doing that. So absolutely working with town and parish councils around where their assistance can be helped would be really, really useful. And as I said, you know, within our countryside sites and nature reserves, where other parties can come forward to help us manage the site, then we are all open for those ideas and that partnership approach, because that's where it's going. Times have changed from that there. What we do need to be careful is that we're not asking others to undertake duties that is the responsibility of the council. You know, what I'd like to do is ask others in that partnership approach to help us deliver that added value, that additional good service for the local communities. So that's something that we are very focused on going forwards. There was a roll around apprenticeships, Councillor Smithson. Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that's there at this moment in time, but within our modelling, we have factored in for those for an apprenticeship scheme. I know within the wider insourcing contract, I think it's a really good idea from a maintenance technician's perspective to have an apprenticeship from that there. I would say prove concept, get another maintenance technician to be able to deal with that demand. And then when we've got our magic 2, which is what we strive, what I strive, we can then start looking at that apprenticeship model and getting that continuity, because I think it's really key to have continuity there. And then again, yeah, Councillor Coleman, yes, absolutely about being flexible, reducing costs. It goes without saying that for us to deliver an in-house model, it's got to be financially better for the council, and that is the remit that we're working to. And I'm quite confident that we can deliver that. Early, indicated when the report came last year, if we were to retender the contract on the current terms right now, you know, we're looking at about a 25% uplift, which is a significant amount on a £1.9 million contract. So, you know, undoubtedly, that is one of our challenges. We've got to look at doing things differently. We've got to look at the services that we're providing, but equally, we've got an opportunity to be able to do that. And that's something that myself and the team are really holding on to.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor King's just indicated, and if you can be brief, please, Councillor King, as we can move on to the next item.
Absolutely.
Hopefully get finished before 8.
I'll wait
Thank
until
you.
the final item. Like everybody else. Just 2 points very briefly on apprenticeships, Reece. It's been a sort of core tenet of the council to encourage this. It was great to go to there was a celebration just a week or so ago here in the old library, and it was brilliant, I have to say, see mostly young people and talk up genuinely about how it's been, how they've been seen through, nurtured, and how it's felt. Have them speak for their experience was really great. I just want to pick up the trees in the High Street piece. That's my head in. Trying to get highways approvals just to the point is a nightmare. If you want to make anything, put anything into the structure, we understand why. I got to the point recently of saying, all right, I want us to take the risk on. If they won't let us do it, can we negotiate accepting the risk? Because I think it's minimal, unprovable, and all the rest of it. I'll worry about it later. So we're on the case in St Nicholas Square, where we've had a brief furore about trees. The trees there, we have negotiated with highways a new planting system, which they are content. So I'd just like to take for the record, Owen, if we could, that we pick this up and go back to this. The parklets were a real attempt to try and break up the feel and look and provide some greenery, but it would be great if we could go the extra step. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And I think that goes back to Councillor Jowers' comment earlier about, 20 years ago, County Hall devolved its responsibility for highways to Colchester, then Borough Council. And I think both of us believe from opposite sides that it worked very well, but we are where we are. Okay, thanks very much. And thank you, Nick, for your contribution this evening. We're going to move on then I think we've got enough time to get the next item in rather than think about a break. So let's move on to support for small businesses. And Karen, last but certainly not least, and I'm going to just invite Councillor Fox to join us as well, as it's his portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This issue is extremely timely. As the report shows, there are more challenges now for small businesses than have ever been faced before, because they're all concurrent. Small businesses can face one or two at the same time, but here we have a raft of really major challenges for them, including climate change, the pandemic recovery, Ukrainian invasion, our exit from the EU. There have been raised business taxes and obviously business costs that we're all very aware of personally, and for them too. So this is a major challenge for them. And our business demography is mainly small and micro businesses. We have very few large businesses. And this is a typical picture across the UK. So there's an awful lot for businesses to be getting on with. Council's approach to supporting SMEs is in partnership, particularly with Colby, Colchester Business Enterprise Agency. And we're very fortunate to have a Colby. Not all places have them. We're the only place in Essex that have got a business support agency. And they've been going for 40 years. So their roots into the local economy and their knowledge and insights are absolutely priceless. I would also say that our relationship with the BID and their 500 members is extremely useful to us. And again, their insights on an almost daily basis are all fed into everything that we do. In addition to those two important local networks, we have wider networks into the Best Growth Hub, which is part of the South East LEP, the Federation of Small Businesses, and the Let's Do Business Group, which has a specialism in particularly in finance. And so we work in partnership with them, and also across North Essex. So there are 6 local authorities that join together to pool some of the discretionary funds from COVID, from the government, to support, to develop up a series of 5 business support contracts. I'm delighted to say that Colby won quite a few of them. And you can see in the report the kind of support that was offered, the programs that were offered, and the take-up from Colchester businesses. In addition to those business support programs, we also support startups quite seriously in Colchester, because Colby also has workspace, and in 2 different locations. One of them is in Colchester City Centre, they've just renamed it, and also on the Severals Business Park just off the A12. And so both of those sets of spaces offer young companies, again, a supportive environment. They can work with each other, and also encouragement and helping them to grow and move on and move out, so they don't need that support necessarily. So they're encouraging churn, and very successfully too. So we have also worked with those organisations to establish what's needed in the town. So in terms of inward investment and regeneration, as we've heard tonight, we've got 14 million plus the Shared Prosperity Fund of 1.3 million, and also the Rural Prosperity Fund too, which is about £500,000. So again, we're engaging with our rural business networks that way, because commercial and community are the 2 themes for those capital programs. We work with Colby to signpost businesses, and we encourage all of those networks to work with each other to signpost across the network. So it's quite a fragmented landscape for businesses to understand how to get into, but they understand the network of the landscape, and so once you're into one, you get access to all. I'm delighted to say that that's quite solid. Hasn't always been the case, but it is now. So we also have a website, Colchester Ultra Ready, and it's a double-sided website. So one half is about inward investment, promoting the place and land that's available and our investment opportunities. The other half of the website is for businesses that are already here, signposting them to business support that's available and helping them. And in addition to that, we have regular meetings with businesses and with those business networks. We have an annual business rates consultation meeting, which is a statutory requirement. And we have the annual economic report, which has just been published as well, which is again in two halves. You have a statistical half and a case study for the other half, so several case studies. So we offer quite a rich level of support. I would say that Colby has let me know that we've had 453 interventions with local businesses. That's a 66% rise on 2020. 51% of those interventions are female entrepreneurs. So I'm delighted to say that too. And business planning is the main request. So it's good to see that they're getting a proper structured support from the get-go, really, which means that in economic terms, business deaths and births, we try to manage that, and again, it support them into growth and moving on. I would just add, it's not a council provision, but we do work very closely with the Innovation Centre at the University of Essex. That was a £12 million investment from the university, and they also specialise in tech companies, and we work with them to help understand what they're doing and then connect them where we can. So a lot of my work is to spot gaps and bridge them. So I hope that that gives you some sort of information behind our business support offering, our menu. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Karen. This comes to us because we asked for a briefing. I think we've had more than a briefing. We've had quite a detailed summary of what's going on, and we recognise, I think we picked that up in the first item this evening, of how important business is to the development of the city. I'm just going to ask Councillor Fox, as portfolio holder, if there's anything else that he wants to add, and then I'll open up to panel members.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it's probably one of those areas, as you know, Karen's laid out quite a high degree of support that the council does provide, or that agencies provide on behalf of the council. It's probably one of those areas that doesn't get touched enough on in, you know, the day-to-day work and that the council does do. But I would also say that, having sat on the North Essex Economic Board for the last year, it's quite clear to me that we're doing significantly more than some of our neighbouring authorities as well, and I think probably getting more out of that potentially than others do. And I think that really is about the engagement that we do with partners. Again, we've heard a lot about that tonight, but I think that, you know, there's always more that we can do. But I think that there really is a strength in Colchester from the partnerships that we have. But I'm really, having, you know, known that the policy panel wanted to look into this, I'm really keen to hear what you've got to say as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. I've got Councillor Jowers and Councillor Smithson indicating. Councillor Jowers.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And interesting, really, because in my view, everything we've spoken about earlier tonight ties into this. Because what brings a business to Colchester? You know, there has to be something that we sell, and it has to be a good retail sale, good cultural sale, good architectural sale. So it's an environment where you want to come to. Now, I can remember not that long ago when the Estates Gazette, which, you know, if you're a nerd, you read, warned people off coming to Colchester. They said it is impossible to get planning permissions here for business. Seriously, I've kept the copy because and to put that in perspective, 25 years ago, a chap called David Cookson scotched a plan at Stane Park for an IT cluster. Just imagine, had we gone ahead with that. We would have been one of the first in East Anglia. No crinkle tin or nothing. I think architects call it pigeon shit, basically. Sorry about that, but that is what landscape and architects call. Now, I was talking to Karen earlier, you know, when we had the pre-debate, and I think that sometimes we don't respect the amount of investment that's put in locally. All of you know about Stane Park, don't you? You know, that gross traffic jam that clutters up Stanway and destroys it. Well, the guy who owned that has now built a 400 desk business park at Langham Lane. It's incredible. So in other words, he's reinvested. And there are other businesses I can think of that have reinvested, because this goes back again to the transition from blue collar industrial working, the Betzers, the Lathe Company, Brackett Longs, Paxman's, you could go on and on. That, in fact, is where Newtown began. That's all Paxman's workers' houses. And what it has replaced it, service industry. So we need to major on that. So when I spoke to the guy at Langham Lodge, he was absolutely incandescent, because he'd been told he could not tidy up the landscaping in front of it. He had to leave it as brambles and nettles because it was natural. You know, there's a French company now want 200 desks there, and they're not going to come there. They might eat the nettles, I don't know. And then he would put a heat pump at the back of the building. And because it was within 15 feet of a bay hedge, he had to take the hedge out. Of course, as soon as it was built, he replanted the hedge, and it's now up it comes again, grows perfectly. We've got to be smarter on looking at how we treat local businesses, people who are coming in. We've got to get out of that reputation of being anti-business. You know, and I think what this does is it shows that we have got that capacity. And I remember when we started on the university, it was specifically spin-offs from the uni, and several was on our lands. That was the crux of it, was that we didn't want anything at Stane Park because it might conflict with something we owned. Not the right attitude, not. Look where we are, on the A12, on the main railway line, within an hour of London, between a major port and an airport. And are we making the best of it? I'm not sure we are, but I'm heartened by Karen's report. I am, because I honestly thought we were the kind of sleeping giant here, you know? And we didn't manage that transition from industrial to service very well at all. We didn't. And I go back, you know, had we had an IT cluster in Stanway on the junction of the A12, A120, you know, and it was just let go. And we don't like that, you know, so I think we have to be pretty upfront about it. I think Colby would do a very good job, but I think we also need to talk to local businessmen. I mean, I could talk about the 3 Ws. Karen, you might know the 3 Ws. You would know West Watson Warren. You know, they reinvest. And they're the ones who actually put big money in. You know, Lodge Lane is £20 million. That's a massive chunk. We need more of them. We really do. We don't want people coming in from London and seeing a business opportunity, take the profits and shove off. So I think we could do more. You know, I really do. And I think we need to be slightly more tolerant sometimes. I'm not having a go at the planners. They have rules and they have to do what is done, but there are ways of doing it. You know, you can be didactic or you can be constructive. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Councillor Smithson.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 points, if I may. As somebody who works for a very, very large co-working company, I'm delighted that Colchester has co-working spaces. the revenue that small businesses generate as a result of co-working is around 10% higher than they would if they sat in their own offices. The collaboration that comes out, some of the most amazing developments that we're seeing these days come as a direct result of co-working. So I'm delighted to see that. And if the guys who run the co-working spaces here would like to talk to someone at my organization about how they can better use their space, that I'm sure they would. My company are never going to come to Colchester, just not on our market at all. But you know, there is plenty of resource there that they would happily share. So I'd be delighted to do that. The other thing I'd just like to say, we are a garrison town. People leave the armed forces every year. I would like to see more partnership with the military. Former servicemen start small businesses. And if they don't start small businesses, it's great to encourage them to stay in the area and become employees in small businesses. And I think we should do more to major on that with the garrison if we possibly can.
Ditto university graduates.
Thank you, Councillor Smithson. Yeah, I think a couple of points there that you make. One that's really important, and that is that there is often a wealth of knowledge and experience amongst members that we soak it up from officers, but I'm not sure that officers often tap into what's there from members' experiences. So thank you for that offer. The second point around the garrison and what that brings to the town, I think is really important. Not only service men, but service women will retire in Colchester as well. And I know Councillor King is the champion, so I'll give him the opportunity just to come back on that when we finish. I've got Councillor McCarthy, and then that's all I've had indications so far.
Thank you very much, Chair. It'll be a really quick one, Karen. I don't know if you can answer this. I just want a bit of good news, really. With regards to the SMEs, it feels like in line with what Councillor Giles says, but it does feel like in the last few years there's been a bit of a shift, and there's a bit of confidence in people starting up businesses in Colchester. And I think that's amazing. I know we do quite well in tech and marketing and that kind of thing. Whether or not you know this, but I'd love to know. Do we do better for SMEs, starting up than say Chelmsford does, or our friends north of the border in Ipswich? Please say we do, because that'd be good. Because our football team's not as good as Ipswich, but that's by the by. I know, I wish they were. But and the other point was a bit nerdy. Do you happen to have a table or graph or some stats on what sort of businesses are starting up in Colchester that perhaps you could email around? Because I would love to see it. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. I'm sure Karen doesn't have that to hand, but yeah. All right. I've got Councillor Law as indicated as well, so I'm just going to bring Councillor Law in, and then I think we'll wrap up, and I'll go to answers.
Thank you. Just a brief point, really. I just wanted to fill some more information around the business support programme. I hadn't really been that familiar with it before this evening, so any more sorts of examples of outcomes. Thank you.
Good point. Good question. Councillor King, I'm just going to invite you to comment around military and retirements and business setup, if you have any.
Well, I can say this, so thank you, Chair. That's a great point. I do see the garrison commander on an occasional basis to ensure that we do speak, and we do have staff assigned to the role of keeping connected. We do employ them. We've got quite a few, or we have had at different times, up at Shrub End, for example, and they are valued. We have the Gold Covenant, so that sets a series of obligations on us, including the ability to, or the obligation to offer preference in certain places and interview and otherwise. So obviously within boundaries and rules and all the rest of it. It may be helpful if I ask for, I'll follow this up in terms of give you a brief, but I have to take the point we can't pay it enough attention, but it's absolutely on the radar. One extra point, Chair, for me, which will be about University of Essex. This has been one of those big things for me since I first came here, which was, how come we don't talk about them? How come they didn't seem to, and it wasn't necessarily true to us. And that physical distance clearly is part of it, plus their own campus first approach. But I see a lot of change in that relationship. the synergy. The garden community is one example of this. It's one of the reasons why I'm supportive of the garden communities, because it's, you know, it offers an extraordinary opportunity to maximise that relationship with the university in a way that's going to be helpful for high quality jobs and businesses in the longer run. So that's not to exclude the city centre in the narrow sense either, but that relationship is going to a really good place. It's to have, as I do, regular partnership meetings, and it's the relationship piece. John, you understand this, and to be there and have the, like, talk about city status and opportunity, feel the energy around the room and the conversation running and flying. You know, we're in the same space as a university in terms of what how we see their future and our future. That's a step up from where we were, and it's really fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Karen, there were one or two things for you to pick up, and I'm sure there are one or two things you just want to remind us of or wrap up with. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councillor Jowers, I'm delighted at that investment at Lodge Park, because not only in terms of the value, but also in terms of space for growth. So those startups that are at Colby, both of those centres, have somewhere to grow that's still local and retain those jobs. So we should celebrate that, absolutely. In terms of university graduates, the Knowledge Gateway at the university is another major investment by the university itself. And they've been very canny. So they've got, they hothouse students in Studio X, which is at the one half of the Innovation Centre. The other half of the Innovation Centre is where those students start to develop businesses. Then they can move out into Parkside Office Village, and there are a variety of spaces there that they can then grow there, but it's all on campus, and they're getting the very best academic advice and links into business as well through the university's knowledge transfer partnerships. And they're a national leader in knowledge transfer partnerships. So there's something very special to celebrate there. In terms of the garrison, absolutely, I would encourage any garrison leavers to contact Colby so that they are supported into Civvy Street and bring businesses with them, because they do have a set of skills that we could really do with. So absolutely that. In terms of the figures, I don't have a comparison to Chelmsford and Ipswich. But it's certainly, I can make some inquiries about the types of startups. I can guess, but I wouldn't want to guess right here, right now. So I'll make some inquiries and get the definitive and come back to you if I may. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I haven't written any recommendations this evening as I usually do. So, but we haven't. I think we've had a fair bite of 3 big cherries this evening and made our contributions felt as a policy panel. We've got nothing else on this item other than to have noted the scope and nature of business support that's available to local SMEs. And I think we've made 1 or 2 suggestions and posed 1 or 2 ideas to be taken away, which I think will stand us in good stead going forward. There is nothing else on the agenda other than me to say thank you very much to everyone for your input this evening, and to wish Leslie a speedy recovery. Thank you all.